Namaskar. The National Security Advisors of India and Pakistan met in Bangkok on Sunday. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj is in Islamabad for the Heart of Asia conference on December 9, representing India at the political level during discussions on Afghanistan, a key neighbor of both countries. Islamabad has said that their talks would now focus on resumption of the composite dialogue process. Her presence in Islamabad rounds off a series of high-level engagements between India and Pakistan in the last 10 days. Prime Minister Modi met Prime Minister Sharif in Paris last week. External Affairs Minister is now in Islamabad, and the NSA and Foreign Secretaries met in Bangkok on Sunday. Well, to put all this into perspective and discuss Indo-Pak relations, we have with us in the studio Ambassador Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, as a former senior diplomat and served as India's ambassador to the United Kingdom and Nepal. And Rahul Jalali is a senior journalist and well versed in Indo-Pak relations. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. We'll start with you, Ambassador Mukherjee. What do you make of these last 10 days, high-level engagements and all away from the media glare?
Well, obviously, given the fact of the meeting between not just the national security advisors, but the foreign secretary as well, which I think was finessed to ensure that this time this hurdle of we will discuss only terrorism on the one side, which is India, and we will discuss nothing until Kashmir is discussed on the other, that was finessed so that the two sides could talk to each other and decide what to do in the immediate future. You remember UFA and after.
Right.
So given the meeting of the prime ministers in Paris, given the statement made by Nawaz Sharif earlier, which in hindsight achieved significance when he met David Cameron and said Pakistan is willing to talk without preconditions and so on, obviously both sides have prepared for this, I don't like to use the word breakthrough with all its connotations, but this development of opening the door for negotiation, for talks to begin.
Right.
And it was very clear that something was in the offing, because the response to the invitation given to Mrs. Sushma Swaraj to attend the Heart of Asia conference, the response was delayed by our side, obviously to wait until the meeting in Bangkok was over.
Sure.
On the question of the media, look, I yield to no one in my feeling that as far as government is concerned, particularly in a democratic country, in a very strongly democratic country like India, transparency and taking parliament and the people into confidence is important. But as a practitioner of diplomacy all my life, all my professional life, there are certain instances, and this is one such instance definitely, where you have to plan something as sensitive as this away from the media glare. There are hardliners on both sides which sabotage discussions. There are all sorts of reasons why, after due preparation, you have the meeting and then you reveal the results into the public domain. I have no problems with that. I think this was well done, and there should be no complaints that it wasn't, right from the beginning, that the media wasn't given invitations to before and during the meeting.
Right. Mr. Jalali, well, this is a cabinet-level minister, of course, our Minister for External Affairs, present in Islamabad for a conference. And as Ambassador Mukherjee was saying, the invitation was, I mean, the answer to the invitation was delayed until perhaps some concrete work had been made that, something positive can come out of this engagement that's going to take place in Islamabad. Do you see it that way?
Yes, certainly I do, because taking on from where Ambassador Mukherjee left, I think it was very important that the media was kept out of the entire, and it was done behind the camera, as it were. Because if you remember, the last post-UFA, the NSA level talks, I think media did play a role in a lot of negativity came across through the media. And they built up a temperature which was unnecessary. And I think when you talk to Pakistan, it cannot happen under media glare, because there are lots of issues which need to be ironed out between the two countries. And if you go public with it, there are too many opinions and too many people who are willing to spoil the outcome. But coming to your question, I think there are two important points. Remember that we are now moving into Afghanistan also in a big way, at least on the table, we are there. Secondly, Sushma Swaraj's visit, the external affairs visit to Pakistan, and the fact that you mentioned it was a bit delayed, the announcement was delayed, shows that the preparation of the summit level 15 seconds or 1.5 minutes meeting between the two prime ministers in Paris was not something which was that sudden. The fact that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif gave a very positive signal before the meeting takes place goes to show that I'm certain that at some level track 2 has operated here.
Right.
Okay.
There are reports that the Pakistani High Commissioner met the NSA and that there were talks between the two. The Foreign Secretary was involved. This was completely away from media. And I have a feeling that there is certain minimum understanding which has been arrived at. The message, everything has been talked, including Kashmir. But let me also remind you that India never shied away from talking Kashmir.
Precisely.
And we see signs of revival of the composite dialogue process if everything goes well with the External Affairs Minister, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj's visit to Islamabad.
Mr. Mukherjee, what would have happened if the External Affairs Minister had not made this visit? Would, would we be back at square one, or would you say that those who are vitiating the atmosphere would have triumphed? Basically, there is an important meeting, a summit that's taking place there. It's also talking peace and security of Asia. It has an important component of Afghanistan in it, and India has an active role to play.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Diplomacy, particularly such a hugely sensitive area of diplomacy like Indo-Pakistan relations, is very often like politics, the art of the possible. You see an opportunity, you test it out, both sides, inch towards something they both can live with. It's something that begins a process. It's not the beginning of the end, but it may be the end of the beginning. So you have to, it's a judgment call by the government, by both governments. And for instance, to answer your question precisely, supposing they had, the talks in Bangkok or even the track 2 preparations, which certainly I fully agree with my co-panelists that there would have been this kind of preparation done. If they had not really succeeded in the sense of agreement on how and where to meet, she should, and she probably would have gone to Pakistan because Afghanistan is a subject in which we are very, very deeply interested. Our strategic interests are involved there. Or she may have sent her junior minister. This is, as I said, a judgment call by government. And finally, I would say the preparations took into account a number of things. Number one, maybe, the results of whatever contacts have gone just before this in terms of track 2, the overall situation in both countries, and the impending visit of the foreign minister, which would provide an opportunity for her to have bilateral talks and take this forward, or not, as the case may be.
Right.
And then, let's not forget the Prime Minister is probably visiting, is scheduled at least to visit Pakistan in April for the SAARC summit.
Absolutely.
Which then brings this hopefully to some kind of fruition, not not an end to the conflict that we see between our countries, but at least the beginning of a process.
Sure.
I would only, as a person, as a former practitioner of India's international relations, I would only say that we should not get carried away either in the media or in the government with the kind of emotionalism that I've seen in previous governments, that you open the door and then you rush through it with easing of visas, visits by this, people-to-people contacts. There's a flood of activity, kind of very positive activity, an onrush of it, which then becomes an extremely negative note when things fall apart, as they usually do.
Sure.
So a very good thing has happened. The door is open to something that may lead to something. Let's take it and calibrate our response as we go along.
Mr. Jalali, emotionalism. This is been used again also by the media and also by the practitioners of the art of diplomacy, maybe from the Pakistan side. I mean, talk about common culture, there's so much that we have, that we share as communities. And,
The negatives have not disappeared. People are still dying on the border. That's my
yes.
only...
No, but often one tends to, these long-lost brothers are meeting and things like that. Taking away the emotionalism and sticking to the hardcore issues, and actually how long-term can this dialogue process actually be? Because, often enough, emotionalism takes it away from the long-term objective.
See, I mean, if you look at what's happened between India and Pakistan, I mean, look, starting from, I would take Simla as one major starting point, the Simla Agreement, which virtually decided on a certain template, if I might use, for further Indo-Pak relations, but we've gone back with whatever agreement we've come to, precisely because the door is completely opened suddenly,
yes.
and there's this onset of emotion and warmth.
Yes.
I think between India and Pakistan, the door needs to be opened gradually.
Okay.
We've got a small opening right now. Let's see what happens.
Exactly.
Rather than just push our way through and then cry and hug each other,
Right.
and then next
So
thing,
the issues on the table then, Mr. Jalali,
I think
currently
two
should not be
major
too many.
issues,
Yeah?
Two major issues. Rest are not, I don't think there is a major problem with that. I think two major issues which need to be looked at, and looked at with care and sensitivity, is India's concerns about terrorism, rightly so, because look, what really puts these talks, completely they fail, is whenever there is a strike, a major terrorist strike in India. Look, the talks stopped after 26/11.
Sure.
On Pakistan side, they tend to raise Kashmir an issue. But as far as my understanding of Pakistan is concerned, Kashmir politically does not sell anymore, except for the extremist jihadi groups who have raised it. But within the main body politic of Pakistan, because if I take you back to Nawaz's, Mr. Sharif's election, he never raised the Kashmir issue and he won the election.
Okay.
So Kashmir is no longer that, but the rhetoric is there.
Okay.
The other important point which I see in this, I have a feeling, and which has been suggested, that the Pakistani army is also on board.
Okay. Absolutely.
As far as these talks are concerned.
Okay.
The new NSA represents the army.
Right.
So I think these are factors where I see things going in a positive direction.
Ambassador Mukherjee, part of the agenda of the Heart of Asia conference is countering security threats. And in that respect, we obviously, you're going to talk terrorism. Terrorism has been an issue, and cross-border terrorism from Pakistan has been the major issue from
concern.
India's. Some people argue, analysts who are hawkish, would also analyze this and say that this has been a success for Pakistan to bring this issue, to bring all their issues onto the table as a policy, the policy of cross-border terrorism.
Well, to make my position clear, I wouldn't like to be called a hawk or a dove or whatever, since the Foreign Office, as Mr. Natwar Singh said, doesn't run an aviary, it runs a foreign policy.
Yes.
But I'm a realist. Yes, I have absolutely no doubt that in Pakistan, I completely agree with him that, the body politic has realized that within their own country and their own political ambitions, good or bad, Kashmir does not resonate so much. But the joker in the pack is the Pakistan army.
Okay.
The bread and butter depends on promoting conflict with India. Just imagine if there were real peace with India, what would be the need for Pakistan to have this armory of nuclear weapons, this huge army which dominates business, which takes up just about all their budget, this whole international posture of theirs of cozying up to terrorists, being subservient to China and the US. If I were a Pakistani, I would be disgusted and insist on a change. So the joker in the pack is the Pakistan army, which, exactly as he said, it's significant that we have a new national security advisor who has been picked by the army. So they're on board. Just so far as these developments are concerned, I would be completely a realist, if not skeptical, about where this leads us in the quest for peace between the two countries. But we have to make the attempt.
Right.
And while we do this, why I said a calibrated kind of approach to talks
Yes.
is that it would be silly to say no talks whatsoever until Pakistan buckles down. I mean, it's put in its place. That's not the way the world runs. But we cannot forget that they are a state sponsor of terrorism. They nurture, train, arm and send terrorists to India, Mumbai included. They have to give certain signals, and I'm sure our foreign minister will, our external affairs minister will speak about it. Signals of what kind? Signals about bringing the perpetrators of Mumbai to trial, certain other signals. I mean, there are benchmarks, there are ways in which both sides can build confidence. And until that confidence is built up from the Pakistani side, which to my mind is easily the villain of the piece, then we should, make haste slowly, exactly as he said.
Fair enough. Mr. Jalali, tension still exists on the border. Ceasefire violations still exist. What about, let's get back to the 2003 ceasefire agreement and, keep it. Would that also be an important signal?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think
cross-border terrorism as well.
All these things will go hand in hand with the progress in talks between the two countries. Where do we go? What happens after our External Affairs Minister, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, meets her counterpart in Pakistan? What is the outcome of that? When the Prime Minister visits the SAARC summit in April, what happens then? And in the intervening period, do we restart the composite dialogue process? Because let me take you back again to when the composite dialogue process was on, the cross-border terrorism or cross-border violence was completely at almost non-existent. So I think these two things run hand in hand. Third,
but then Mumbai came.
Yes, but by then the talks had almost failed. Apart from the army, even if the army changes its mind, look, let's not underestimate the structure and the power of groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and other groups in Pakistan. Let's not underestimate them. And on no basis do they want peace with India or to resolve the issue of Kashmir or terrorism. They thrive on terrorism. Secondly, within Pakistan, I think Pakistan army is also finding it difficult to grapple with these terrorist forces. They've created a monster. Now the monster is also eating them up. So this is a crisis. And within Pakistani army, there's a huge element of people who are soldiers, who are influenced by these groups. So I think Pakistan is not sitting in that happy position as far as terrorism is concerned. And even for their own good, they need to talk with India for their own survival. And like you suggested, in these talks, because Afghanistan, it's focused on broader Asia, but terror is going to be the central issue in these talks, because remember, with the rise of ISIS, ISIS, Daesh, Levant, whatever you call it, that is on the international agenda, and it's going to be there.
So that is the background then, Ambassador Mukherjee, the fact that terrorism is an international issue, it's being discussed, and alliances are being built, and there is a war to an extent in Syria, where forces are involved. And, well, I mean, the possibilities of recruitment for ISIS come from countries like Pakistan, even Bangladesh, and, these are concerns.
These are major concerns. I would easily say, I would quite comfortably say these are the most major concerns. We must not back off. And I don't think any government of India will, most of all the current government, which has made it a point to underline the fact that they are going to be tough on these, on the whole issue of terrorism. Terrorism is, we are one of the major targets of radical Islam. They have declared us as a major target. It's not that it's not an opinion anymore. IS has declared us as a target. Al-Qaeda had long ago declared us as a target. And those threats are not simply PR on the social media or the internet. Those threats are very, very real. We have to be, and the operational spearhead of the terrorists, as far as India is concerned, is the nation of Pakistan and those who rule it, which is particularly the ISI and the Pakistani army. So on the question of terrorism, one hopes and one is confident that the government will be very tough indeed.
Okay.
A ceasefire, yes, would be a signal,
Right.
but it has to be then carried forward. The next logical step should follow. On terrorism, India is very much a vulnerable target. We may call it an international problem and hope that the international community will get together to fight it, but the record so far has been extremely patchy and in fact hypocritical. When we wanted information on Headley, the US did not give it to us until they had done their deal with Headley, and we got some crumbs.
Yeah, okay.
So this talk of this most crucial subject of sharing of intelligence
Sure.
for us is not a non-starter, but hasn't helped us much. So we have to carry this battle through ourselves,
Okay.
most of it. We have to make the running ourselves. And therefore, on the question of terrorism, there is no doubt in my mind that the government will keep it up front and not dilute its importance to us in the talks we have with Pakistan.
Mr. Jalali, let's talk about intent, I mean, from Pakistan's side, because very often Pakistan promises a lot of things and, things seem to be moving forward. Perhaps the door opens a little wider and then, everything gets derailed once again because of cross-border terrorism, because it continues to be a policy of statecraft for them. How does one actually deal with this?
Yes, I mean,
here again, this might be this issue.
Yes, exactly. Like I pointed out before, and like Ambassador Mukherjee said, that this is a central issue for us. I mean, terrorism. But one thing I noticed this time, after this meeting in Paris between the two prime ministers, if you remember last time when UFA happened, the first statement condemning that meeting, especially on the issue of Kashmir, came from Hafiz Saeed,
yes.
which was later picked up by the army, which raised questions. But this time in Pakistan, no one has questioned the meetings between the prime minister.
There too, the media has been kept away. I mean, though they have been reporting it a little more than we have.
But they know about it. I haven't noticed a statement from these extremist elements, which I think is a positive sign. So obviously there are certain signals which Pakistan has given us on terrorism also and control of terrorism. And knowing Kashmir, I'm not saying that terrorism is over in Kashmir, because just today a month-long encounter which happened in Kupwara has just ended today. So now we've got to look at it. What is going to happen on the border? Over the last 1 week, there has been no major incident of cross-border firing. Secondly, next, are there any major strikes in Kashmir or anywhere else in India? I think this is going to be a crucial question before I think a composite dialogue restarts. And it also depends on the kind of assurance that Mrs. Sushma Swaraj gets in Pakistan from her counterpart.
Ambassador Mukherjee, a word about leadership as well, because relationships can languish over a period of time. It requires strong leadership to bring out new initiatives. And if we look at the last 10 days, we've seen some rather unusual kind of diplomacy, or perhaps maybe for you all it is part of regular practice. But, the media hasn't seen something like this. It seems unprecedented. In 10 days, 4 high-level meetings take place and things seem to be back on track.
Well, on other issues, it has happened. On other files, as we call it, it has happened. I wouldn't say that simply because there's been a succession of quick events that something really extraordinary is around the corner. There have been far too many failures in the past, far too many assurances from the other side that have been reneged upon, starting not just from Shimla but even before. So I would go back and sort of modify what Theodore Roosevelt said, that you trust in the talks but keep the powder dry.
Okay. A word from you, Mr. Jalali. The Pakistan media says this is reinvigorating ties. Would you quite agree with that? Well, you have said that we should be cautious.
Yes, I repeat that. We should be cautious. We should go slowly. Let's not suffer another heartbreak like it's happened always. But I think
and the media should be kept out entirely for the longest
the media can't
course,
be kept out totally, but I think not the way media has operated before. Certainly that I would not argue that should happen. But I also want to point out, I see a major difference and a lot more sagacity shown by the leadership of the two countries in these level of talks, the manner in which it's been conducted. It's out of the public glare. and a public debate around Indo-Pak relations has not taken place. So I think it's a very positive move, and I hope it moves forward.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on Late Edition. Well, the media has put intense pressure on the India-Pakistan relationship that is both complex. It's a complex relationship in which adversarial and hardline positions and views tend to be debated ad nauseum, in fact, to the detriment of talks often. Now, however, saner voices have also encouraged dialogue and long-term patient engagement to clear distortions, whether they are back channel or at the higher levels. And that has actually been happening with India and Pakistan. The last 10 days of high-level engagement has kept an intrusive, polarized and high-decibel media on both sides at bay. And the media has in the past been blamed by both countries, in fact, for vitiating the atmosphere and making things difficult for talks. It seems the government's Pakistan policy is taking diplomacy to where it should be, away from the media spotlight, in the national interest. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.